wherever you're joining us from. I'm excited to be here with Ramona J. Smith. Ramona J. Smith, the 2018 World Champion of Public Speaking. We're going to be talking about public speaking today. And this is actually from a book on a World Champion's Guide to Public Speaking. You might want to look out for that. I read that book and I really enjoyed it. Please help me welcome 2018 World Champion of Public Speaking, Ramona J. Smith. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
No
We're going to
problem.
dive into it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I read something around. A lot of people would rather be in a casket than, than be the person giving the eulogy at the funeral. That's something I can connect with because that the fear of public speaking is real for me and I think for most people.
Mm-hmm.
We would love to know before you become the champion, what was your early days of public speaking like?
Early days of public speaking were fun for me. I've never had a fear of public speaking. So that statistic, that fact, it never resonated with me because I was the person who loved to be on stage. So early days of public speaking for me looked like hosting talent shows. It looked like being a part of the drama club. It looked like not being afraid to get on the microphone, doing open mic poetry. And it was very fun simply because it wasn't so formatted. We are all members of, well, most of us are members of Toastmasters. And Toastmasters, we have to speak a certain way. We have to stay away from certain subjects and topics. But when you are free and exploring, you can learn what to say, learn what not to say. You can just kind of explore your speaking style. So early days of public speaking for me looked like fun, desire to want to find more stages and get more stage time, and exploration.
Wow, that's very unusual. That was you're one of the top people there because I was a very shy kid. So my early days of public speaking was very different. So now let's dive into the fact that you are the 2018 World Champion of Public Speaking. As a Toastmaster, I know what that means. And it includes writing a speech and making sure that you can practice the speech. For you, what was the process like for you? Writing that speech, practicing the speech, and getting ready to be the world champion.
For those of us in Toastmasters, we know that there's an international speech contest every single year, and every single year there's a new world champion. In 2018, that was, of course, before the pandemic, and things have changed a lot since then. But you have to have a separate speech for the actual World Championship of Public Speaking. The first speech that I did from the club level to the semifinals level was called Not Good Enough. That's on YouTube. I don't know if you watched it already, but that's the speech that got me all the way to the final stage. But when you get to the final stage, it has to be a separate speech. I thought I had a speech ready. I had written a speech when I knew that I was going to be a district competitor. I wrote a new speech, but I wrote it in my living room. I wrote it from my perspective. I wrote it thinking I was going to have a good message for this audience that I was unfamiliar with. However, at the semifinals in Chicago in 2018, I started to get to know the audience, and I kind of took the temperature of the audience, and I said, the speech that I wrote in my living room by myself without the audience in mind is not going to land. And that was Thursday. And I had to deliver a new speech on Saturday. I decided to take a speech that I had given a couple years before that, and I just kind of refurbished it and switched some things around. I got some insight from my fellow Toastmasters, and then we had Still Standing. I was freaking out though. I was panicking because it's Thursday and I have a day and a half to prepare. But one of my good friends and a fellow Toastmaster who was in my club at the time, Heidi Caperton, she's an amazing writer and amazing editor. She told me, relax, don't think about the speech Thursday night, go to your hotel, take a nap. Okay. Okay. And so I went to sleep and I woke up Friday morning and I said, we're going to do boxing.
Wow, interesting. You just mentioned your semi-final speech.
Mhm.
Not good enough. I watched that speech so many times. I encourage our viewers to go and watch that speech. One of the things you did during the speech is using a new word, good enoughness. And three times you used this as a source of humor.
Mhm.
And almost every time you got a reaction from the audience. My question is, how did you come about that? And also, how is Cliff doing?
That's good. That is good. That's really good. Well, I kind of have a natural sense of humor. I have a natural ability to make people laugh. And just from watching different comedies, different sitcoms, watching stand-up comedians, I've developed an understanding of what's going to be funny and what's not going to be funny. Good enoughness, a lot of people, I knew that they were going to question that. Is that really a word? And I decided to play with that. And I don't really know how to technically describe the the strategy or that technique. I don't know what that is. We might have to call up Darren LaCroix because he's the humor specialist.
Yeah.
But I guess it was catching people off guard, or maybe taking advantage of the fact that I knew that they were going to say this is not a word and kind of forcing it on them. I don't know if this is called forceful humor. I'm not
Mhm.
sure, but that's kind of why I went with that, because I knew it was going to be funny, and I knew that if I continued to say it, it was going to leave a lasting impact, that people were going to memorize it. As far as Cliff, he's doing very well. He is exploring many. He's always been an ambitious person. Now he's a firefighter. He spent some time in the army, so he continues to be successful. And I thank him for not choosing me, because it gave me a great story, and the rest is history, as they would say.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I really enjoyed those speeches. So that's the speech that got you from the club level all the way to semifinals. Wow, that's something to learn from. You just mentioned something very interesting now, humor. Humor is part of what I personally is trying to learn. And you mentioned humor coach in your book.
Mhm.
And part of it, of course, is timing and also pausing. Is there any experience you would like to share around that for people who are actually considering using that in their speeches?
It's hard for me to explain certain things that come naturally to me, because I don't have a formula. I don't have a format. It was nothing that I learned in class. I didn't take any improv courses. I haven't read a bunch of books on humor. It's just something that comes naturally for me. It's probably from watching a bunch of funny shows and watching funny videos, and watching comedians. I think humor is just something for me that comes naturally. So I don't know how to explain it very well. But again, I'm going to bounce back to Darren LaCroix. If you want to learn the techniques of humor, if you want to learn how to be funny, if you want to learn more about these different types of humor. Oh, he has courses, he has videos, he has podcasts that really break down what is humor? What does it mean to be funny? What do you need to do to be funny? Can you be funny by incorporating more pauses? Do you want to actually tell a joke? It's hard for me to explain that because it comes naturally for me. I think about star athletes like LeBron James. When he first realized that he could dunk probably at 13 or 14, I'm pretty sure it wasn't a science yet. I'm sure it is now, but then it was an art. He probably didn't understand how to explain the velocity and the speed and the different the scientific pieces of it, because I actually look at public speaking through the lens of art. It is an art to me. And if you ask an artist, well, how many brush strokes did it take you to create this masterpiece? It's like, I don't know. It was in my mind, and so I just did it.
Wow, interesting, interesting. I think those are very important. The speech that you gave for the semifinal and the speech you gave for the finals, there's something that is very different about them is the body language.
Mhm.
And in your book, you wrote that you can use words to tell people, but you have to use your gestures to show.
Mhm.
That's something that you did very well. In your semi-final speech, you just came on stage and you were using the ruler to move around. And I wonder if people will be looking at what's she doing
Mhm.
before you start to speak.
Mhm.
Then your final speech, you came on stage, you just smile. Then you pause, you looked around, you gave some gestures. And also the boxing thing was terrific.
Thank you.
Somebody described you as a force. That it was Luis Bravim in the post, which is like, that's really good. So under gestures, how do you determine? Because those gestures were not gestures that you have to, you can come up so easily, right? You have to think about it very well. So when you're adding gestures to your speech, because that's how you show people, how do you make that decision as to, oh, which gesture is appropriate in this kind of instance?
With a high level speech in a high stakes situation, I choreograph those gestures. I choreograph those movements as if it were a dance routine.
Hmm.
Those of you who are listening who are dancers, you know, it is on a certain beat, you're going to do a certain move. When the music says a certain word, you're going to do a certain move. And that's how I crafted those gestures for that particular speech, still standing. Day to day, I'm not calculating my gestures. I let my hands do what they're going to do naturally. But in a situation where every gesture counts, where every time I scan the audience, I want to make sure they know that I'm connecting with them through my eye contact. I want to emphasize the message and emphasize the impact of the message. I'm going to calculate and plan all those gestures. It really depends on what you want to work on. For instance, I've never been a person who had different, I guess I would just call them ticks. I'm not the hair grabber lady. I'm not the clothes fixing speaker. I'm not the steeple, the power steeple. I don't have certain things that I all go to gestures. So I didn't have to work extremely hard on trying to figure out what not to do. For me, I wanted to be strategic and I wanted to be in alignment with the speech and with my gestures, and it just felt better to choreograph and to know what I was going to do when I was going to do it.
Wow, interesting. That's very good. Thank you for saying that. One of the important part of the speech, your book, and also the speech, the final speech, most especially, you at some point you sang and you said, "I'm still standing." Yeah, yeah. Then you gestures to the audience. We're still standing, hoping that they will repeat it after you. And as luck will have it, they actually repeated that. That gave you two in one: vocal variety, and also the fact that you did a call and response. You were able to make the audience gesture and also sound, at least make some sound in response to that. My question is, were you in a choir? Is that a real song? and and how? Because I'm thinking, if I when I give my next speech, I would like to include something like that. So, what was the thinking behind that?
Actually, I did not expect the audience to respond that way. That was not my intention. That was not something that I had planned when I was writing the speech. I didn't say pause for audience response or pause for audience reaction. I was just saying, now we're still standing. I thought it was a moment to just speak to the audience there, but I never expected them to respond ever. And that's why when I said, "Oh, very nice," when I said that in the speech, it was because I was shocked. And I was like, "Oh, wow, they're here. We're connected. They like me." I did not plan that at all, but it was a moment of connection. And it was a moment that we shared together. And I feel like it was one of those moments that was the difference between myself and the other competitors that year. I was just able to connect by doing that. I'm not in a choir. I'm not a
Yeah.
singer. I have no aspirations to be a professional singer. I do enjoy karaoke every now and then, but that's
Yeah.
about it. But note to people who want to incorporate singing into your speech, be on key,
Right.
be a lot of people want to do the singing because it's different and it's creative, but if you don't sound good, it is going to ruin the speech because people are going to say, oh, well, I see what you tried there, but it doesn't sound good if you're not on key, if your voice cracks, if the notes aren't correct. So if you're going to sing, make sure you sound good.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I'm actually in the same boat with you. I'm not a professional speaker and singer, but then I also have instrument. I try to sing within the key.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that we'll have one comment here from my namesake, actually. She said, I love the song, by the way, and it added a special flavor to the speech.
Oh, thank you. That's
That's
she's been very supportive. So thank you. It's
thank
Tolu, right?
yes, yes,
Thank you.
that's it. That's right. Thank you for joining, Tolu. Okay. All right. So, in line with that explanation you just gave, for people like me that came from another country, Nigeria, I can imagine that I have to be careful with vocal variety, right? Because I have an accent. My daughters will tell me every day, "Daddy, you have an accent." That's the, that's nothing I can do about it. So, for people like me that are not native speakers, so to say, what advice would you give on vocal variety?
Well, I feel like my brothers and sisters from Nigeria, you already have a certain cadence that is rhythmic and
Mhm.
it flows. Your voice goes up and your voice goes down. Your voice goes up and your voice goes down. I wouldn't focus so much on the vocal variety as much as articulation, because when you're saying certain words, as someone who's not a native English speaker, there may be some challenges with distinguishing what you're saying. There, it was like you have to really enunciate and pronunciate and articulate certain words that may, if the back syllable of the word trails off, or if you say a word that's similar to another word and we perceive it as something else, we
Mhm.
may get lost trying to figure out what you're saying. So people who don't any like I don't speak Spanish fluently. That's not my mother tongue. And so I have to be careful with my Spanish words because I may try to say something one way, but the way I enunciate a certain word, or if there is not a hyphen, a stress, and I
Yep.
forget stress, it is a different word.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
in any language, we just want to, any language that is not our native language, we just want to make sure we articulate and we stress the syllables that need to be stressed, and we get feedback from people who speak more fluent English to say, well, you tried to say mountain, but it sounded like you said mountain, and we don't know
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
mountain is. So I wouldn't focus on the vocal variety so much. It would be more articulation and pronunciation.
Good, good. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. One of the other aspects of speaking that we all can agree on as a Toastmaster and also a speaker is the eye contact. And you mentioned creating an illusion of eye contact in your book. That also made me think about the fact that eye contact might be different based on the audience, based on the location where you're speaking.
Mhm.
So, is there any differences you've observed based on your environment or based on audience location as you try to use eye contact, or you think it's basically the same thing?
Eye contact is a challenging subject for me. Again, I have not been a, a scientific student of public speaking. Therefore, I haven't done, as the years have gone on and I've done more coaching, I'm getting more into the research and into the the techniques and into the more strategic ways of explaining different areas of public speaking that we want to improve. And eye contact is one of those things where it's difficult for me to say, well, you need to do the 74.5% eye contact to the right side, 62.7 eye contact to the center, and 27.2% contact to the left side of the room. It's difficult for me to explain it. However, I know the more that I speak, the more natural it becomes, because of course I cannot make intentional eye contact with every person in the audience, but I'm also not fake scanning the room. It's not a robotic scan just to make sure I cover all the different areas of the room. I do like to separate the room into 3 different sections: the left, right, and center. And I try to nurture each one of those sections. And when we're structuring our speech, that's where stagecraft helps us, because if we have 3 main points, just like in my speech still standing, I can start here. I can then shift to the middle, and I can shift to the other side. And that allows me to give enough eye contact to the entire room so that nobody feels left out, and so that I'm always trying to connect through the eyes. Zoom, of course, is different, because right now I'm looking at my screen, but right now I'm looking at you. And that's a challenge if your speech is on the screen, or that's a challenge if I really want to look at your face, but it looks like I'm not looking at you. It looks like I'm looking downward, versus if I'm staring directly into the camera, you can tell that I'm actually looking at you. That's one of the big differences with eye contact in person and this is not Zoom, this is StreamYard, forgive me, but between virtual eye contact and in-person eye contact.
Yeah, you just advertise for Zoom, because they
know,
were
right?
they were the one that took over during the pandemic. So I understand what you were talking about.
Thank you.
All right. So another part of your book, the guide for public speaking that I read, well, you mentioned call to action. Call to action. If the person in the room never see or hear from you again, how do you want to be remembered? I think it's a very important part of any speech. Another person would say, well, tell the person what you want them to know and tell them what you want them to do at the end. So for you, how do you make sure that the call to action is fulfilling all the criteria you mentioned in that statement?
The call to action is, I like to keep things very simple. A lot of people want to overcomplicate things, or some people who are teachers of certain subjects or are experts of a certain subject try to make it more complicated than what it is. In most speeches, we want to do just a few things, and it doesn't have to be all of them, but you want to inform, you want to entertain, you want to persuade, you want to motivate. Your call to action should be just that. If you want people to love kittens more, that can be the call to action. Let's all get together and love these cats and adopt a little kitten today, or buy a book about your favorite animal. A call to action is simply, what's their homework? I don't know if you guys had what's called an exit ticket in class, but when I used to teach, in order for the students to leave, they had to answer a question on a little slip of paper, and that would be their exit ticket to be able to see their understanding, check their understanding, and then allow them to leave. Your call to action could be like an exit ticket. A speech without a call to action, it reminds me of what one of my clients says. He says, we don't inspire, then abandon. If you give me this phenomenal speech and I feel so motivated, or I feel so encouraged and inspired, and then you just say, thank you, back to you, Mr. Toastmaster. Or if you say, that is the end of my presentation, I'm ready to open up the floor for questions, but you haven't given me an assignment. You haven't given me another level to experience what I just heard for the last 45 minutes. What do I do now? It's like a what now type of thing. And I don't ever want people to leave the audience with a what now. I want them to leave the audience with a, now that I've heard this speech, I'm going to.
Wow, wow, interesting. We have some comments here from Toluleke.
She's so
Great
great.
perspective. CTA is like your famous last words. Yeah, that's true. Thank you for sharing, Tolu. Then Anne also said, I agree. I remember that exit ticket. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Anne. So you just mentioned something that I always think about, what you were doing professionally before you became the world champion of public speaking. And you just said it's teaching. So my question is, how did your teaching experience contributed to winning the world champion? Was this something that you thought about? Did it help, or was this something that you even had to struggle with? Because as somebody said that educators try to make simple things complex.
Mm-hmm.
My mentor, actually, yeah, my mentor, John C. Maxwell, I just saw, he said that educators try to make the simple things complex, and they want you to be confused. If they are confused, they're happy because that means they thought. And so for someone who has also taught as an adjunct, as a full-time college professor, I wonder if that is true. Then communicators, he said, try to make complex things simple.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, you being a teacher, did you try to confuse your students, and and how did the process of being a teaching person, somebody who is a teacher, transition to being the world champion of public speaking?
Well, I was in love with public speaking first. I never wanted to be a teacher. That was never my aspiration. But when I finished college, I couldn't find a job in my field. I graduated with a degree in public relations and marketing. I could not find a job in PR. I could not find a job in marketing. And my sister and her husband were teaching. And they said, well, just become a teacher. And teaching is a form of public speaking. That's easy. All I have to do is understand the material and be able to teach it to these young people. But I know in no way that I ever tried to confuse my students. Number one, because I actually wanted them to learn. I taught child development and human growth and development. And in the district that I was teaching in, it was a lot of underserved youth that were experiencing the challenges of growing up in an impoverished area, and all the challenges that come with that, from being raised by a single mom to being exposed to way too early drugs and alcohol or gang violence. And I developed just this passion to want to help them learn this subject. So I did not want to make it complex at all. And some of the students were experiencing teen pregnancy, and not just the women, but the young men who are going to be fathers at 17. So to understand the development of your child and these ages and stages of this new little person that you're going to have, that was important to me. So I never tried to confuse them. I wanted to inspire them, encourage them, and make it fun and easy. Because teaching is a form of public speaking, I'm speaking every day. I had an audience of 180 students every single day. That was very helpful. And high schoolers are a tough crowd. Tough crowd. And so being able to break down the barriers and break down the walls and be transparent and create this environment of family and of trust, it's just another audience to learn. And being around young people, oh my goodness, they just keep you so young. They they keep you times, the styles and the trends and the latest fashion, and they give you energy. I have to get up there and entertain these 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Otherwise, they're going to be sleeping on their phones, bored, and just having that energy. I'm pretty sure that helped me on stage throughout the whole process, because I can show up energetic. I can show up with a kind of air of youth because I'm dealing with kiddos all day.
Wow, thank you. I totally agree with you. I told you somebody described you as a first. I wish somebody can can describe me as that at some point in my life. So this is very important. You mentioned the journey that you took to get to that point. One of the things about the journey that we've not talked about is the fact that you didn't win the world champion the first time. It took you coming back and say, I'm going to get this. And my question is, what kept you motivated? What made you believe that you can? Because some people could have given up, right? Some people will give up, like, oh yeah, I don't have time for this. I can I can go and do something else. So in your own case, you didn't give up. You came back and you won. What was the motivating factor for you?
I've always known that I was a great speaker. I've always known that I wanted to be an internationally known motivational speaker. That was my mission statement for many. It was a part of my mission statement for many years, long before I even joined Toastmasters. I had that in a mission statement plastered on my walls to read every single day. I've always had a love a love and an admiration for speaking. I've always wanted to be the one on the stage, not in the audience. Anytime I was in the audience and someone was giving a keynote, especially if it was boring, I wanted to, no, I should be up there. You should have said this and not that. And in 2015, I knew I incorrectly knew that I was going to be the world champion that year. I did not know that I was going to be the world champion 3 years later. I was a little premature, but I still, I'm a feeler. So something inside of me just knew that I was going to win. And I didn't win that year. And I tried again in 2016, but I didn't even make it past the club level in 2016. That's from lack of preparation. Then in 2018, I had a new sense of just renewed purpose. And in 2018, I wasn't focused on just the win. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. They just want to win. They just want the trophy. They just want the title. In 2018, I just wanted to learn, grow, and have fun. And I always say that it's the truth, though. I wanted to learn, grow, and have fun. And that's exactly what I did. And that's what continued to take me to the next levels of the contest that year because I knew I had the talent, I knew I had the gift, I knew I had the passion, but I let go of the egotistical side of the want to just say that I'm the world champion, or I didn't really have in 2015 a why. Why do you want to be the world champion of public speaking? Because I want to, because I'm good and I want other people to know that I'm good. That was 2015. In 2018, why do you want to be the world champion of public speaking? Well, I don't necessarily want to just be the world champion. I want to sharpen my skills. I want to learn more about how to be a better speaker. I want to continue to enjoy this skill that I have.
Wow, wow, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. And Anne is saying thank you for your service as a teacher. Ramona, I echo your passion with serving our youth. Love the transition from teaching to public speaking.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne. So one of the things you said just now is the fact that you knew that you were a good speaker and you didn't give up because of that. You didn't give up because of that. My question is, now that you're a coach and you observe people, you listen to people speak in your Toastmasters, outside Toastmasters, people you meet generally, what are the qualities that make you think that this person could be a world champion of public speaking?
Well, I don't coach people who just want to be the world champion of public speaking. I don't do that. If someone tells me I only want to work with you to become the world champion of public speaking, I say thank you so much, but I am not the coach for you. And I don't only coach Toastmasters. And if I get a client and they're not a member of Toastmasters, they have no desire to become a world champion and they have no idea what that means. However, one of the women that I am coaching, she's a semi-finalist. And how I knew that she was going to ascend in the competition is because of her work ethic. Because of her work ethic, she put in so much time and energy and effort around creating this amazing speech. And she had a team of support around her, not just working with me, but working with other great communicators and other fellow Toastmasters to help her continue to round out the speech and smooth out the sharp edges of the speech. I would say the makings of a world champion are you have to work harder than everybody else. You have to spend time with the speech. You have to get to know the speech. You have to be open to feedback, because the more you open your speech up for people to hear, the more people are going to tell you change this or change that or change this. And you have to be open to feedback, but be careful to not get overwhelmed with feedback. So open to feedback, hard worker, the what else? Some type of support system. You cannot do it on your own. I didn't do it on my own. I didn't have a world champion to coach me, but I had a bunch of beautiful Toastmasters women to help guide me through the process. I would say those are my top 3 things of being a world champion. Well, maybe 4. I would say work ethic. You have to work hard on the speech. You have to spend time with the speech, being open to feedback. A lot of us hold these speeches dear to our hearts. And if you you have to take this or change this, no, I want to keep that part. Okay. Then a dedicated Toastmaster, because if you win the world championship of public speaking, you are going to be sought after. They're going to want you to come do a podcast. They're going to want you to go travel to different district conferences all over the world. Are you ready to serve? Are you ready to serve? It is not about you anymore. It is about how you can serve this organization and inspire other people to want to be better speakers and to show them how. And I had a 4th one, but it's slipping my mind right now. But work ethic, open to feedback, dedicated Toastmaster.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Those are very powerful. I hope our viewers are taking notes. There's a part of your book that I also found very interesting. It says, one of my sponsors mentioned to me that I needed to upgrade my wardrobe. I did not look like a world champion. So that's when you became the world champion. Let's even go back before you became the world champion. Your semi-final speech, you were wearing a skirt. Then you switch it up to to what you guys call pants in America.
Mm-hmm.
That we call trousers back in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look very different. My question is, of course, I know when you're boxing, you have to dress a little bit different. I understand that, but looking at the big picture, what advice would you give for dressing during a speech?
That really depends on the speech. It really depends on the speech. The reason why I went with the skirt and blouse was because I thought it looked professional. At the time, I was a teacher. That's something that I would wear in my classroom. I've never been a stylista. I've never been extremely into fashion. I just try to keep it simple. I went with the dark navy blue blazer with the black shirt because I saw LaShonda Rundles speak, and she was the world champion of public speaking in 2008, and she passed away from lupus in 2012, but I believe she was the first African-American woman to ever win. And I drew a lot of inspiration from her. Her name is LaShonda Rundles. I took a lot of inspiration from her, and she had on navy blue when she spoke. Now, she did have on a skirt, but I knew, just like you said, I'm going to be all around this stage. I'm going to be boxing and shuffling my feet, and I don't want to wear a skirt because it's just too risky. What if I fall? What if we don't want to risk? That was a safe bet. But any dark colors, it's just powerful. It went very well with the big blue background that year, and that's I wanted to exude power, and I didn't want to do pink or red because I didn't want it to be soft and too feminine, because it was still a man's game. A woman had won in 10 years before me, and that woman was LaShonda Rundles. And I was only the 5th woman to ever win. So I wanted to kind of have a more masculine, powerful presence. And I knew I was going to be all over the stage dancing and bopping around, and I didn't want to wear a skirt then. But back to your point about the not looking like a world champion, that's Balaji. out of Dubai. He was the first district director to invite me out of the country. That was my first trip to Dubai. And he told me, "You're doing very well. I love your speeches. You're knocking it out the park. You just don't look like a world champion." And somebody else could have taken that wrong. They could have been very defensive about it, or it could have shot their confidence down. But he was right. When you are a world champion of anything, people have a perception of what they think you should look
Yeah.
like. And I was never a world champion of anything before, so I knew how to dress like a teacher. But it's like, you think of your favorite music artist. If they show up and they don't have, if you go to a concert and they show up and they're not dressed to impress, or they look very basic, it's like, okay, the music is going to speak for itself, but it's just the whole image and the whole brand. And ever since he told me that, when I travel, I have a makeup artist, I have hair, I have outfits. It was great advice for me, and it was more so for the branding and the image.
Wow, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope we are all learning from this, even myself. One of the things that I found very interesting in speaking, and you also shared that in your book, is about the culture. When you go to different places, you have to be aware of the culture of the people there. And you said in your book, I was in Dubai, the first destination on my 2018 speaking tour. I shared my love for being a woman, and I gestured towards my womb area. And this was not really taken the best way based on that. What was that experience like, and what did you now decide to do differently going forward from that?
I was oblivious, because in America, we are very open, and the freedom of speech and the freedom to practice whatever religion you want. When in the Middle East, there are, I don't want to use the word strict, because that's not a good explanation, because there's a negative connotation there. It is a different culture of respect. It is a different culture of expectations, especially if you are in a country where the majority of people practice Islam. Islam, my Muslim brothers and sisters, it's just a different air of self-respect, integrity, and modesty. And we just don't have that in America. We just don't. You can say what you want, wear what you want, do what you want, be what you want. And I didn't, I did like a circle from my belly to my hips.
Yeah.
But because my hand was going in the direction that was below my hips,
Yeah.
it was suggestive.
Oh.
I had never been to Dubai before. I had never visited a country where the majority of people practiced Islam before, and I did not know. However, they were very gentle with me, and they made light of it and said, "We didn't know where you were going with that, but you didn't go there." I'm very grateful. But here, that is looked at as very suggestive, and we're not as open to those suggestive gestures as other places, specifically in the West.
Wow, interesting. I mean, I have Muslim friends. I know it's a different culture, it's a different religion. One of the things I also found very interesting, they are also within the same religion, the beliefs are different. For example, there's a section that is a part of Muslim that I experienced in Nigeria, whereby they don't even look at you when they talk to you, especially if you're a woman. Yeah, they look down when they're talking to you. So
you lower your gaze. Yeah.
it's
And a lot of places that I visited, we don't shake hands. And as a Toastmaster, for me, it's like, oh, we always shake hands. But in some countries that I visited, if the man practiced Islam, you're not my wife. I'm not touching you. I'm not shaking your hand. And so it was kind of just a mutual head nod or an understanding. But those are things that if you don't know and you don't study them before you go, you kind of just learn on the fly. But I respect it. I'm not going to try to force someone to shake my hand, or I don't feel disrespected by that. because I understand that in different cultures, there are different ways of life, and I respect it all.
Wow, wow. Thank you for sharing that. Still in the middle of talking about how public speaking changed from one place to another place. You, based on what I know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You were in, excuse me, you were in Houston for a long time. You went to Chicago to win your public speaking title, and you're currently in LA.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How did that change of environment impacted your public speaking journey along the way?
I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, in the Midwest of the United States. And where I grew up, public speaking wasn't even a thing unless you were a pastor, unless you were a teacher, unless you were a politician. I didn't even know I could grow up to be a public speaker or a public speaking coach. It wasn't a career path that was well known. And in the neighborhood I grew up in, it was urban, it was inner city, and I didn't have the skills or the polish. I could use incorrect grammar, I could use profanity if I wanted to. I knew that I wanted to be on stage. I just didn't have the skills, which is why I joined Toastmasters. I was very raw in Cleveland, very talented, but very raw talent. Moving to Houston and being a teacher and being in the South, I developed a little bit of an accent. I picked up a little bit of the Southern drawl, but I was also able to learn how to slow down because, as you can see, I speak a little faster, but in the South, it's more relaxed, it's more laid back, it's more friendly, it's more kind. I'm not in a rush. I'm here to have a great time. I'm still adjusting to LA, and I haven't even done a lot of public speaking out here. I've been doing mostly coaching out here. I'm still getting familiar with the LA audience, but I believe the raw speaking skills that I had in Cleveland mixed with the Southern hospitality and then bringing it to the West Coast, which is a very chill, laid back environment, a combination of all those things is going to help me be able to connect with any audience anywhere.
Wow, wow! Thank you for sharing that. The time is going very fast. When you're enjoying yourself, I guess the time goes very fast. In your speech, the final speech, you did something that I've never seen done before, and I think based on what I've seen, that's one of the reasons why, beyond the gestures that people like a lot, the vulnerability that you put on stage when you were giving that speech, I think that's one of the things that people really enjoyed. That's one of the reasons I go back to watch that speech all over and over again. I can imagine that's why it has so many views. You were vulnerable a couple of times. One of the times you were vulnerable is about your marriage. And at the end of the speech, you make a joke about how single Toastmasters call me. Never seen anybody do that before. My question is, did anybody call you? Then also, would you recommend this? How, if somebody wants to use this kind of technique, what would you advise them? And is it better than dating app experience? To put yourself in that kind of position?
I believe a lot of Toastmasters are married and they're happily married. So I didn't get any dates from that. I didn't get any phone calls, no proposals. People made jokes. I remember being in Dubai and a guy got down on one knee and proposed. That was funny. That was hilarious. But no, I did not get any dates from that. And I would tell someone, don't copy what I'm doing. Try to do something else. People have already seen that. Don't use that strategy. But if you're going to do something a little risky, you have to stand behind it. As the young people say, you have to stand on business. And what does that mean? If you're going to do it, you cannot have any hesitation. You cannot have any apprehension. You cannot have any regret. If you are going to make a bold statement as to portray to the world that you're this single woman looking for a date, you have to stand behind that. You can't shy away from it, and you cannot get upset from the outcome. Because if I would have had an outpour of emails from single men, how do you can't take offense to that. You put yourself out there to 2,000 people and now over 1 million with the video going viral. Stand behind it, be confident, but don't try to copy off of someone else's technique because it worked. Be unique, be creative, do something that works for you. But if you are going to do something risky like that, stand behind it 100%, be confident and own it.
Good, good. Thank you for sharing that. And Toluleke, you said that's vulnerability. And that was amazing. See, I'm not just making these things hard. One of the things I also like that you did during that speech is that you made mention of your ex, and you said, "Oh, he's fine too." That's really, I think a lot of people also like that, because you're not with somebody a lot anymore. That doesn't mean that there's not a good aspect of them. There's always, everybody has a good aspect of them. So based on that, what advice would you give around marriage?
Oh my goodness gracious. Take your time. Take your time. And I've been married twice, and I'm definitely going to get married again. In my first marriage, my first ex-husband was amazing. But the difference is he was a husband, but I wasn't a wife. There is a huge difference between a woman who wants to be married and a woman who wants to be a wife, a partner, a helpmeet if you are a Christian. When you are in a marriage, it is not about you. It is not about the ceremony. It is about how you can serve this other person, how you can give to this other person. It is not about you and fulfilling your loneliness and trying to keep up with the other women just because they have husbands and you just want to have a husband as an accessory, like a handbag. That is not the case. In the case of my second marriage, I knew I wanted to be married, but I didn't take the time to get to know the whole person. I did not take into consideration that you're not just marrying the person, you're marrying that person's family. You're marrying that person's great side, that person's not so great side. And you have to take your time. Advice on marriage: don't rush. And that's for people who are not in arranged marriages. I don't have any advice for arranged marriages because I don't experience that. I've never experienced that. I get to choose, which is, of course, not, I probably should have been in an arranged marriage. I wouldn't have two under my belt already. But for those of you who choose your partner, be patient with the process. Just because you meet someone, you don't have to get married in 30, 60, or 90 days. Get to know the whole person and be ready to serve. Good, bad, ugly. Be ready to serve. Be ready to give. Be ready to forgive 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. And make sure you have given yourself some time to get to know who you are, what you like, so that you don't lose yourself in the union.
Wow, wow. Thank you for that advice. That's very important, because the whole essence of marriage is to help and support the other person. That's what the Christian values teaches, and that's very clear. Still on vulnerability. You're very amazing on this, so we have to stay on this for a while. One of the things that you said in your speech is that I dropped out of school 4 times. And somebody was, one of the world champion of public speaking was evaluating your speech. I watched that today. They said, well, he said that, well, dropping out of school is something that is big, twice. So that actually draw people to want to listen to you more. What situation would you have like to share around that? And one of the critique that I also received, that I also watched from that person, was like, they said they would like to know if how the whole process led to you going back to school and actually finishing top class eventually. So based on that critique, based on my own thinking, any backstory that you like to share?
Well, just touching on vulnerability in general, it just helps people feel connected to you, because when you are on a stage, you do have a level of authority, and people are, depending on how high the speech is, they're looking up to you, and you're this keynote speaker, or you are the highlight of the event. People automatically kind of, I don't want to say put you on a pedestal, but you have a level of credibility and authority that kind of builds up a wall. And it's not a negative thing, but it is a wall because this is the speaker and I'm in the audience. The speaker has a little bit more power because they are on the stage sharing their information, and I'm just here to listen and absorb. Vulnerability helps you take down that wall and deconstruct that wall brick by brick, because it's saying, yes, I'm up here speaking. Yes, I made it to this high level of this competition, but I am still a human. I still make mistakes. I still experience failures. I just chose to keep going. and that's what vulnerability is all about. It's about breaking down the walls and saying, I see you. I am a part of who you are. I'm a reflection of you. I'm no better or worse than you. And I feel comfortable enough within myself, and I feel comfortable enough with you to share all these experiences that were great and not so great. As far as college, neither one of my parents at the time had, when I was going to college at 18, neither one of my parents had earned their degree yet. They were very hard workers, but they hadn't earned their degree. So education wasn't really a priority past high school. Higher education wasn't a priority. The priority was to provide, and you can provide by having a decent job and a decent income. I didn't have any direction. I didn't have any guidance. My mentor of 20 years now, she would always tell me that I was a rudderless teen. I didn't have any direction. What am I doing? And I go to this college. I don't have they say you have to begin with the end in mind. That's a habit of highly effective people. I never started with the end in mind. I started because I thought that's what you're supposed to do, go to college. But I didn't know my major. I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a plan. I didn't reach out for support, and I didn't have any motivation. And I thought that college wasn't for me, because I would go to this school and I don't like it. I'm going to leave. I would try a different school. And I tried many different types of schools. I tried the Division I school that was huge with 30,000 students and not too far from home. Then I tried the private religious institution where it was Division III and it was very quiet and it was a Jesuit institution. Then I tried community college and then I tried another community college on the West Coast. And then the thing that changed everything was becoming a mom. That changed everything. Once I knew I had this little person, Ryan, who's in the book, looking up to me, I knew I had to get it together because I didn't want him to think that quitting was okay. And that was the turnaround for me, becoming a mom.
Wow, wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Last question for today. One of the things that I would like to know now that you've become the world champion of public speaking, any advice that you would like to give to people that are aspiring, and also any comment on branding? Because I see that your professional name is Ladybug. How did you come about that, and any advice for people that are aspiring? So you said that they don't have to be the world champion of public speaking, but people that really want to become better speakers, any last thoughts for them?
Understand that it is difficult to become the world champion of public speaking. The odds are not in anyone's favor. And unfortunately, the more you compete, the lower your odds are to actually become the world champion. To go through all these different levels against all of these amazing speakers from all around the world, the percentage is very, very, very low. It's less than 0.3%, I believe, because one of the previous world champions actually did the math. And it was like the odds of you becoming the world champion are like 0.03467%. They are very, very low. Not only because you're competing against tens of thousands of other people, but because we're humans and the coaching can be subjective at times. It can be subjective at times. If you're talking about something that I don't like, or if I'm a judge and maybe I have something against you, or not against you, but if I just kind of want this other person to win, unfortunately, it shouldn't be like that, because in Toastmasters, we are very ethical, but we are still humans. We cannot control the pen or the brain of the person who has that ballot. So it's very subjective. And if you do happen to be among the few who win the world championship of public speaking, it is not about you. It is not your show. First of all, it is Toastmasters. You are the world champion of public speaking through Toastmasters. You are representing this organization. And the expectation of you as a world champion is to serve this nonprofit organization, which you're not going to be paid to speak. You're not going to be paid to go to these different places. They'll cover your travel and your lodging and your food. You are not going to get a $10,000 check for giving a 60-minute keynote in this organization. You need to be ready to serve with no expectations behind it. You need to be ready to travel if necessary, or get on these live streams and virtual meetings and share your experience. It is not about you. Take your ego out of the equation. As far as image and branding, it depends on where you want to take it if you become the world champion, or to those of you who are very optimistic, when you become the world champion of public speaking. Do you want to do a book? An ebook about it because you're going to be traveling and you're going to be well sought after? Do you want to start creating a coaching curriculum? Do you want to be a coach? Do you want to do interviews with all these different media outlets? You have to figure out what you want to do with this title, because it's going to come with a lot of publicity. As far as your brand or your image, do you want to keep it under the Toastmasters umbrella, or do you kind of want to separate yourself from Toastmasters and say, thank you, Toastmasters, for this award, but now I want to be Dr. Tolu Incorporated?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot. If someone else has any questions about that they can get in touch with me and contact with me, and we can schedule a power hour or something like that, because it's a lot. But overall, service is number one when you become the world champion. And as far as your brand and your image, who do you want to be known as inside and outside of Toastmasters?
Good. Thank you for sharing that. No question at this time. How can our viewers contact you in case they need your public speaking coaching services? How can they contact you?
Of course, you can email me. I speak at ramonajsmith.com. You can visit my website and sign up there, ramonajsmith.com. You can... I don't think I want to give them my WhatsApp number publicly, but I have a Google Voice number. I don't know if that will help. It is +1 216 309 2341. So if you have Google, you can send me a message or call me on Google Voice with that phone number, +1 216 309 2341. So email, website, text, or call me.
Good. Thank you so much. Please like, comment, and share this whenever you can. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can reach more people. And Anne is saying thank you for the dynamic presentation, full of art, laughter, simple but powerful point on public speaking. Congrats, Ramona. Thank you. At this point, we end our session. Thank you. 2018 World Champion of Public Speaking, Ramona J. Smith. It's a pleasure speaking with you. I'm not taking this privilege for granted. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.